King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of December 11th, 2018. And this is officially episode number 379. And this is your host, as always, Dr. Brian D. Parsons. And we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network right here at ParanormalKing.com. And this week we continue the countdown, the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2018. It's the year we're in. And we're going to unveil 3. Count it. 1, 2, 3 more stories tonight of the top 10. So we did 10, 9, 8, 7. So we're going to uncover 6, 5, and 4 tonight for those of you who are counting at home. And kind of excited. I mean, not that I want to get it over with, but years past, I drag it out 5 weeks or longer and I go into the new year. But I think it's good. We're going to get this done. We're going to wrap it up next week already. And we're going to hope that in the last week of 2018 that the big breaking story doesn't happen. And don't worry if it does. We'll talk about that in the new year. We'll iron that out. We'll cross that bridge. If it burns. I guess that's how it goes. I'm not sure how they say that, but yeah, we'll talk about that if it happens. I'm not going to think I don't think it's going to happen. It usually doesn't. Nothing big happens at the last week or two of the year. I'm pretty confident of that. It's been a pretty dry week in the paranormal news anyway, which I'm happy, and that's one of the reasons why I started doing this top 10 is that yeah, it's pretty slow this time of the year for paranormal news stories. I don't know why. I don't know what the thing is. If people are just thinking about Christmas and thinking about family and all these other things. But yeah, either way, we always got something to talk about here on the Paranormal News Insider. If it's a story or if it's a countdown or if it's, I don't know, something going on in the paranormal. So tonight we do have a couple of stories. And we're going to talk about finding Bigfoot. Something is afoot with finding Bigfoot. I like that. I didn't think of that till now. Did we go to the moon? Yes, I'm going to go there. I usually sidestep the whole conspiracy theory stuff, but tonight, did we go to the moon? A world champ says no. He says not so. So we'll find out about that. Also going to talk about a story that is really interesting me. I don't think that it's not really a paranormal story, but I really got to really paying attention to this story about a mountain lion that supposedly attacked somebody out in California. It turned out not to be true. It's an interesting story. Could potentially be it's a pretty serious story. Could turn out to be a sad story, but we're going to talk about that. And again, like I said, the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2018 continues tonight. And yes, Finding Bigfoot. There was also a TV show called Killing Bigfoot. Not necessary, in my opinion, but there was a show called Killing Bigfoot. But yeah, who knows? I don't know. I don't make this stuff up. So anyway, a quick note. Kind of a programming note for me, I guess. This Sunday, I'm going to be appearing on a podcast, the Nightmare 365 podcast, with hosts Matt and Greg. And these guys explore all things weird and do seem to focus on the paranormal news, which is kind of weird. And it's nice to see them reach out to me for me to be on their show. I mean, they really and truly, they could consider me competition, which I've kind of gone round and round or seen other people kind of attack me for the fact that I concentrate on paranormal news. That's my thing. That's my format, paranormal news. So it's great that these guys are reaching out. They want me to come on the show. I don't know what we're going to talk about. Maybe paranormal news, maybe the radio business, maybe just the paranormal. I don't know. It's I kind of like that. Just come on the show and let's just talk. Sometimes that's fun. Sometimes too much formatting, too much interviewing, having too many questions. That's too much. So anyway, yes, this Sunday, relax, Dita. I'm getting to that part. Going to be on the show, Nightmare 365 podcast with hosts Matt and Greg. This Sunday, December 16th. That's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern on nightmare365.com. It's going to be fun. I told you I would have at least one more appearance. These guys hit me up and said, "Hey, we want you as a guest." And they've been doing this for a little while, so they're not new by any stretch of the imagination. Two really interesting guys. They talk about anything and everything. I've sat and kind of watched a few different episodes of this. Yes, nightmare365.com. You got it. Again, this Sunday, December 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And these guys are from New Jersey, I believe. So a couple Jersey boys. And Buckeye here, I guess. Call myself that. Yeah, anyway. Let's see. Yeah, like I said, the news has gotten a little bit slower this time of the year, and it always seems to happen. You may have one or two decent-sized stories pop up here in December, but for the most part, it's pretty boring. There was one story I was kind of keeping an eye on. I was going to kind of dig into it, but I got a little bored with it and decided to kind of throw it in the round can over there. And it was about, I don't know if you guys saw this, the Bigfoot sighting at the, I don't know what you'd call it, Christmas party. There was a Christmas tree and a bunch of people hanging around, and the person filming was like, "Hey, what's that?" "Oh, I don't know what's out there," said another person. And they pointed out the window. Oh my gosh, it's a Bigfoot type of creature. It was really bad. It was really horrible. And if that was the real thing, then it was pretty bad. I would say it was fabricated. I would have to say. But either way, I mean, there's not enough detail in this creature to really tell if it was real. And even if it was, there's really nothing about it. There's really nothing to talk about there. If you see it, I don't know how much I believe in it. I mean, it hit the Daily Star after being kind of pushed around YouTube a little bit. So I don't know. I don't hold much stock in that. But what I do hold stock in is something that took place on Twitter last night, less than 24 hours ago. I didn't hear anything about this prior to this, so I'm not sure what's going on. And so Twitter is the source of this first story we're going to talk about here. Encrypted news, an announcement from the official Twitter page of the BFRO. The BFRO stands for the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. And BFRO is led by Matt Moneymaker. I'm not making that up. That's his name, Matt Moneymaker. One of the hosts of the popular television show Finding Bigfoot, which came to an end earlier this year without Finding Bigfoot. They were unsuccessful in fulfilling the name of the show. Kind of embarrassing, a little bit. I mean, they found plenty of squatches, but they didn't find Bigfoot. I don't know. At least they thought they found a lot of squatches. There's definitely a squatch in nearly every episode if you were to watch that. But anyway, last night, a tweet from the official BFRO Twitter, I don't know what you call it, Twitter handle, Twitter site, Twitter, I don't know what it is. But anyway, the tweet read, quote, "Important announcement coming soon regarding the spin-off series of Finding Bigfoot," unquote. So interesting stuff. And I do have a little screen cap of that I'm going to throw into the chat room so you guys can see this. If I can find it. I think it's here somewhere. And, well, there it is. There it is. So, yeah, less than 24 hours ago, it was last night, about 10 p.m., so yeah, I guess 22 hours ago. But so far, no official word has been released on any sort of announcement, by BFRO, by Matt Moneymaker, by any television network or anything like that. So we'll have to hold out as of now for any exciting details on a new spin-off series of Finding Bigfoot. I don't know. I don't know what would it even be called, or what the speculation could be. I mean, citing Sasquatch, I don't know what it could possibly be. I don't know what direction they're going in here, but nonetheless, it's interesting to hear some interesting news about a show. I mean, I don't want to say I wasn't a huge fan. I liked the show. It was enjoyable to me, but probably on a different level than a lot of people, because I didn't take it serious. I really thought it was kind of a mix of, there were some legitimate sightings, people that came on there because they did see things, but a lot of it was just people vying for attention, and then just kind of showcasing some of these really rich areas of case reports. But the investigation itself, I mean, you're not going to just stumble in a bunch of woods and run around screaming and beating up trees with sticks and find a Bigfoot. And, one night in the woods isn't going to reward you with anything but wishful thinking at the end of the night. So, I mean, I took it a little tongue-in-cheek, but, hopefully the viewing audience didn't take it too seriously, because I don't think it was very scientific or anything like that. I mean, you can find Bigfoot during the day. Don't take the television show as gospel that you have to go out at night, you have to scream, and you have to hit trees with sticks, because that's really not the only way to do things out there. And obviously it shouldn't be the only way, because so far that really hasn't gotten a whole lot of results. You consider the Finding Bigfoot television show, just a television show, began airing on May 29th, 2011, with the final episode coming on May 27th, 2018. So over 100 episodes, 7 years on TV, and they didn't find Squatch. Didn't find Squatch. Anyway, that's my one-line pun of the night. And I guess that's it for cryptid news. We'll have to we'll find out. Hopefully the next couple of weeks, there'll be some sort of announcement on that upcoming television show. Now, in other news, and what I'm going to call news, well, the professional sports players are at it again. So last year, professional basketball players Kyrie Irving, Draymond, I don't know how, Draymond Green, sorry, Draymond, and Shaquille O'Neal, former NBA star Shaquille O'Neal, host of the Buick commercials. He's big. He's huge. Well, those guys and probably a few other bench players got into the conspiracy talk last year as they voiced their opinions that they felt that the earth was flat. No, this isn't that big of a story. This year, Steph Curry, the Cleveland Cavaliers killer himself, stepped up to the free throw line to throw his conspiracy theories toward the bucket. Curry feels that the moon landing was a complete hoax. The moon landings. We did it more than once there, Steph. I'm just bitter because he beat the Cavs. That's all. Well, I mean, we won. We got one. We got our championship here in Cleveland. I don't care what the Browns do. The Indians probably won't win anything. So we got our championship. We had our parade. I'm happy. I live to see it. That's all I care about. But anyway, now the Golden State Warriors All-Star, well, he feels that the moon landing, yes, complete hoax. And he admitted his thoughts during the Ringer's Winging It podcast with Vince Carter and Kent Bazemore. After making his statement, Curry said, quote, They're going to come get us. Sorry, I don't want to start conspiracies, unquote. Well, you didn't start it. It's been around for a long time. This just thought that we didn't actually go to the moon. That's been around for a while. I mean, I've seen the evidence. I've been to museums. I've touched moon rocks back when you were allowed to touch them in museums. Now you're not allowed to. I don't know why. Weird. I've seen all the hardware. I've actually seen, if you have a pretty good telescope and you know where to look, you can actually see stuff up there. You can see reflections of the mirrors and some of the shadows of the equipment that's up there. So you just got to look. You got to take your time and look. Well, Curry was worried about somebody coming to get him. Well, they did. They did come after Curry. Well, they being NASA. So NASA spokesman Allard Butel communicated to Steph Curry through a response to the New York Times on Monday, where he said, quote, "We'd love for Mr. Curry to tour the lunar lab at our Johnson Space Center in Houston, perhaps the next time the Warriors are in town to play the Rockets. We have hundreds of pounds of moon rocks stored there in the Apollo mission control. During his visit, he can see firsthand what we did 50 years ago, as well as what we're doing now to go back to the moon in the coming years, but this time to stay," unquote. So for the record, just want to clear one thing up. Kyrie Irving actually backed off on his 2017 comments, attempting to make it sound as if he were kidding. But after several run-ins with teachers and scientists, he finally fully admitted that he was wrong and publicly apologized about thinking and telling other people that the Earth was flat. And he did that back in October. It's funny, and I don't understand why sports figures have to get involved with anything in the popular media, whether it's science or politics. Because people who get their political following or their scientific information from people who get paid to play kids games, seriously, something wrong with you. I'm just going to say it. I mean, these are guys that aren't paid to think. They're not paid to rationalize. They're paid to do one thing: dribble the ball and throw it into a little metal circular thing. That's all they get paid to do. Run up and down and throw a little thing into a hoop. That's it. And as far as politics and all that, I don't understand why movie stars and musicians and all this get involved. And it just do your thing. Just make your video. Just buy your yacht. Be on MTV Cribs. Release your albums. Go on tour. Smash your guitar. Do other things that you want to do in your little world. But you know what? Don't tell me who to vote for or who to science and all that. I'm just saying. Well, yeah, I mean, sure. Ronald Reagan was an actor. Yeah, well, he was an actor, but also a politician. Can't really say much about the Donald Trump being an actor. I mean, I don't really know if that was acting, being on that show. I guess it was, but he built some nice towers. So anyway, before I go down that political, I don't know what you call it, landslide, a wormhole, I don't know. Yes, I mean, they're entertaining to an extent. These sports stars that talk about flat Earth and all these other things and other conspiracy theories. Yeah, it's funny to hear them talk. But the problem of it is there a major influence on the youth of the world. And these kids tend to believe it. There was actually groups of people, growing organizations behind what was said about these flat Earth things last year, because there was a movement starting because of what these people said, and it became a little dangerous. And teachers were telling not Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving last year about how they were forced to reteach curriculum because the students just totally didn't believe anything that they were saying. So damage can be done. And, again, they have a responsibility. And just because you don't personally believe in something doesn't mean you should go on there and stir the pot and tell everybody else that this isn't real, because he ended up looking pretty silly about that whole mess. But anyway, moving along. The story that I was talking to you about at the beginning here about a mountain lion. Yeah, it's not really technically paranormal. Mountain lions in general are not considered cryptids, but if they are seen east of the Mississippi, with the exception of Florida, it's generally, to me, a pretty big story because they're not supposed to be there. But this story takes place in Nevada County, California, which is in, I guess you'd call it north central California. It's northeast of the Sacramento area, up in the hills, the mountains. So officers in Nevada County, California, responded to a call around 5:40 p.m. on Sunday evening involving a man who was said to have been attacked by a mountain lion. Interesting. A 50-year-old man was found by a passerby who saw the man lying in a ditch with a 6-inch cut to his throat. An initial report of the event said, quote, "Original reports to our patrol deputies indicated the injury was the result of a mountain lion attack. However, a joint investigation between the agency and California Department of Fish and Wildlife has found this claim to be unsubstantiated." Unquote. So, yeah, there was no evidence to indicate that was the case. And a mountain lion isn't just going to cut your throat. Mountain lion's going to grab you by the back of the throat, break your neck, and that guy wouldn't have been rescued at all. I mean, he'd have been gone. And you're probably not going to get attacked outside your home looking for, getting your mail or anything like that. So a search warrant was issued to enter the victim's home to search for clues, as authorities felt that the incident may have started there, as the victim was found nearby. The man was found alive and taken to a nearby hospital where, at last word, I haven't been able to find anything in the last 10 hours or so. It says that he was in critical but stable condition. So mountain lions are plentiful in that particular area and have been responsible for a few attacks and 2 deaths this year, including one in Washington and one in Oregon. The first one in Washington, the gentleman was on a bike. So on a mountain bike, you're going pretty fast. That's not a very smart thing to do in an area where mountain lions are, because you're basically just making them want to attack whatever's moving. So that's not good. Now the other person in Oregon, she was a hiker by herself, and at first they weren't even sure if the mountain lion had actually killed her or had just made her its a meal, basically. Just found her and began to snack on her. I don't know what else to say, but it goes down in history as the second death of 2018 by a mountain lion. Now, these were the actual first 2 deaths reported in North America by a mountain lion in 10 years. So this isn't a common occurrence. People, are terrified of mountain lions. They think that they're just man-eating cats. Well, that's not really true. They're really afraid of people. We're not on their menu. They don't make a habit out of chasing us. They're very curious of us, and they will stalk us. Plenty of videos out there on YouTube of mountain lions stalking hunters. And, they're curious, but, sometimes it seems that there's a little bit more than curiosity. And as you know, curiosity can kill a cat. It usually takes an arrow or a shotgun blast, really. But to put things in a little perspective, so between 1890 and until this year, there was only 20 recorded fatal attacks by mountain lions in all of North America. Meanwhile, in the same time period, there's over 100 documented cases of fatal snake bites in the United States. Now, you'd have the same average of being attacked by a shark as a mountain lion, and would be more likely to be killed by a bull, by spiders, by horses, by dogs, or by bees. And bees are actually the most dangerous animal here in North America. They kill more people than any other animal. So to put it in another perspective, an average of 51 people are killed yearly by lightning strikes. 51 people by lightning strikes just in the United States. That's crazy. I'm not going outside anymore. Well, I guess it can get you inside too. I don't know. So that's your paranormal news for this week. And what I wanted to do this week was kind of look at the years that were. The last few years, looking back, I've been doing the top 10 paranormal news countdown since 2010. So it's not been the entire time I've been doing the show. Looking back, I did do kind of a top couple stories back in 2008 and 2009 until I started doing the official countdown in 2010. I really felt that it was a good way to document what was going on in the news of the paranormal, kind of to tie a bow around that particular year and just say, hey, this is what happened this year, and this is what we have seen. This is what I've documented through my reports during the year, and just kind of a way to kind of reflect back year by year. And I try to do a blog. I think I've missed a couple of years every now and again. But all in all, I've tried my best to bring this to you guys every single year. And again, I think it's a good way to really document what's going on in the paranormal, because a lot of times we forget about these stories. A story comes out, we get all excited about it, then it goes away. And then the next story pops up and we all focus on that. And with that, sometimes we don't really know that there was a solution to the prior stories. So that's what I like to focus on, as well as finding the solutions to these stories. I keep a notebook. I know it sounds weird. I keep a notebook of stories that don't have actual logical solutions. And I every now and again, I'll flip through that and look to find out if there has been a solution. Every now and again, it does take time. I think it took about 1.5 years for me to find out what happened to those, where was it? In Poland, where they had those, oh goodness, I forgot. The mermen, I don't know which ones they were. And so I just had to hold on. I was really excited to find out the solution, kind of disappointed, but excited at the same time, because I like closure. I like knowing what happened with these stories. So anyway, I'm going to touch on some of those tonight before we get into the top 10 of 2018, and I wanted to talk about some of the stories that didn't make the top 10 for this year, but I figured it's probably smarter to do that next week. And we'll talk about that then. And so then that'll be it. That'll be the top 10 next week, and we'll reveal that number one story. There's a lot of speculation from the chat room about what could be number one. At least there's one story I know everybody wants to see in that top 10. Well, I don't know. Am I taking a 3-week break? I know I'm taking Christmas off, which is the 25th. I'm taking New Year's Day, which is the 1st on Tuesday. I think I'll be back, though. Should be back the 8th. But after that, I would only be back on the 8th and the 15th, because the 22nd, I'll be out of town. I'll be out of the state. I'll be out in Arizona the week of the 22nd. So I won't be here for that one either. So it's going to be an interesting year. I get at least 2 weeks off in a couple of weeks after, well, Christmas and New Year's, which is nice. I mean, I've done shows on Christmas before. I've done shows on New Year's Day before, but got a lot going on. Got to get ready for my trip to Arizona, which I'll talk about later. But anyway, looking back, it's always nice to look back and at these stories. Sometimes it's depressing because sometimes I see a story and I thought, wow, this is going to be the biggest story of the decade, and then it ends up not being, becomes a joke, really. So 2008, really what got me this gig here on the Paranormal News Insider. I was on a show, I was on a podcast back in, I believe it was May. I was the first guest to a show called The Grand Dark Conspiracy. And it was a monthly podcast, came on the show, talked about ghosts, my background for 2 hours. It was a great show, a great interview. I had a lot of fun. And as being the first guest, I kind of felt an obligation to make sure that that show succeeded. So I hung out. There was a chat room for it. There was a message board for it. So I hung out with that. I wanted the show to be successful, just so I could say that I wasn't the one that brought it down. I helped recommend some guests. And again, it's a monthly podcast. It's pretty hard to survive as a monthly podcast. And I believe Lloyd Auerbach was the second guest, which is pretty cool to beat Lloyd Auerbach on a show. And then there was a couple of other ghost guests. And then I came back in August of 2008 to talk about cryptozoology, to kind of shift the show away from ghosts. There'd been however many months that was continuous ghost guests. And ghosts are the big draw. It was, at least 10 years ago was the most popular of the three. I don't know, you could argue that cryptozoology may be even more popular than ghost investigation right now. I don't know. Maybe it's just my perspective, but it seems like a lot of people have jumped ship. So one of the big stories back in 2008 that really broke around that time, August and September, was the Georgia Bigfoot hoax. And really and truly, I kind of consider that the number 2 story that year. Probably the number 3 story back in 2008 was a kind of a long forgotten story, the Stephenville, Texas UFO sighting. And this was a bunch of UFOs that went over the Stephenville area, which is near basically where at the time George Bush was, and I think it was Crawfordsville, Texas. So these UFOs came flying in, zooming in. There was radar data to back this up. It was a big story, and I don't know, assumed cover up, I guess. And consider that the third biggest story, the biggest UFO story of that year. Now, the number 1 overall story in 2008 has to go to none other than the Montauk Monster, which was a strange-looking beast that washed up on the shores there on Long Island in Montauk. A really ugly-looking creature, created a big mass hysteria about what this creature might have been. And a lot of people chimed in. Jeff Corwin, animal expert, chimed in and said, more than likely just a raccoon that had been bloated, washed up on shore, had lost its fur from being in the water. And just, it's hard to identify a creature like that that's been in the water. So it was a lot of debate. It wasn't it was really, and the weird thing is there was also a conspiracy theory that this creature had disappeared. And the initial picture, if you look up Montauk Monster, it looks big, but it was really not even that big. It was pretty small. They thought it was either a badger or raccoon based on the tooth structure, skull structure, and what you could see of the body. So basically this body was purportedly picked up and taken by somebody, and then it was thrown in the trash somewhere, and it was just a big urban legend that kind of sprung up behind it. So that story lasted for a while. So it broke, I believe, in the late spring, early summer. Then it lasted pretty much all fall. It was just probably popping in and out all over the place. But definitely the biggest story of 2008. 2009 was a pretty boring year as far as the paranormal news was concerned, which kind of stunk because that was my first year behind the mic talking about this stuff, and I was just doing a very short segment on the Grand Dark Conspiracy. So we had the return of the Montauk Monster that year, and we also, I would say, one of the top stories that year was a UFO crashed into a wind turbine. Well, at least that's what the headline was, but it was really just a storm and bad bolts, and the wind turbine broke. So kind of a boring year that year, but then 2010 is when I really decided to focus on doing a countdown. And yeah, so we've got a bunch of stories here. Bigfoot being lured out by a candy bar. Ghost girl busted. Let's see. Another Bigfoot story. North Carolina. Tracks. Yeah. Nothing really big. Stephen Hawking, who's passed away. Was that this year? Earlier this year. Was a big deal in the paranormal because of some of the things that he's said about some of these stories and about UFOs. I mean, his big thing was that we should keep our mouths shut. We shouldn't be broadcasting stuff in space because if they come after us, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be basically like what we did to the Native Americans here, where we just basically stole their land. That's pretty much what's going to happen to us if we contact aliens. He was basically, at the time, back 10 years ago, was promoting a new television show called Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking on the Discovery Channel. But he got plenty of press with talking about that. His theory that basically like Christopher Columbus discovering America, and look what happened to the natives in that scenario. And it was a pretty big story, but it only landed number 7. Number 6 that year, July, they were talking about the Higgs boson, or the God particle. They were closing in on that thing. And yeah, a lot of people were freaked out, and are still freaked out by the Large Hadron Collider. And yeah, there's a lot of power in that, but there's not at the same time. So I don't know. It's pretty small stuff. And also back in 2010, there was a lot of Chupacabra sightings. So Chupacabra back in 2010 made it to the top 5. I don't think he's been there since. The search for Yeren, the Chinese Bigfoot, landed at number 4 back in 2010. And number 3 was kind of a UFO prediction. Well, there was a prediction that a show of UFOs would happen over multiple major cities on October 13, 2010 in a book. And I'll be darned, because on October 13th, over New York City, dozens of people saw UFOs hovering over the city. It was rumored that airports were being shut down in New York City, but that turned out to not be true. But ultimately, that turned out to be balloons. So was it? Well, I guess technically it was right. It was UFOs at first, but it turned out to be balloons. Number 2 was the Chinese shutdown of the airport. There was a big shutdown because of UFOs reported over the Shaoshan Chinese airport was shut down. Pretty interesting stuff. It was pretty big news. It was really frustrating because it happened in China. We weren't really getting up-to-the-date news on that, so it was kind of hard to follow. And then on number 1 of 2010 was the September 27th gathering of multiple U.S. Air Force officers at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. to talk about UFO disclosure. So disclosure was a really big word. You probably saw it 9 million times in 2010. 2011 Another mysterious animal, strange creature laying on the sidewalk there on the ground was number 10. Number 9 was actually, you probably don't remember this, but a NASA scientist announced that they found proof of extraterrestrial life. It's true. It was announced back on March 5th, 2011. It wasn't real, though. It wasn't true. It was not really peer edited material. That guy was a little off his rocker. But yeah, it was broadcast. Number 8 was the scientists actually made particles move faster than light here on Earth, and nothing blew up. Basically, they actually went from Geneva, Switzerland to Italy, and the particles actually arrived earlier than what they thought. They almost arrived before they were released. It was kind of weird. Strange, scary stuff about physics. Let's see. Number 7 was about a Siberian Yeti-like creature in Russia with Igor Burtsev, which is he is a well-known Russian Bigfootologist, or I guess Yetiologist. I'm not sure. Number 6 was UFOs at football games. There were multiple stories where UFOs were seen at football games, most of which were people parachuting with flares on their feet. So it wasn't real. And some of them were just time-lapse photography that people didn't really understand how all that stuff works. I don't know. It's weird stuff. So number 5, back in 2011, was astrology. Yes, astrology. People were told that their horoscopes were changing and the world lost its collective mind. People were worried about having to get their tattoos changed and everything else, but it wasn't true. It was just old news, really. And yeah, just settle down, people. It was nothing to jump off and go get a new tattoo for. Number 4 of 2011 was chupacabras. They were back in the news again. Number 3, a new show. So number 3, 2011, was a new show debuting on the Animal Planet channel called Finding Bigfoot. Finding Bigfoot. So that was the number 3 story back in 2011. It was debuting. And would they find Bigfoot? Well, I can answer that now. They did not. Number 2 in 2011 actually started on December 31st, 2010, when 3,000 blackbirds were found dead on rooftops and roads in the small town of Beebe, Arkansas. From there, it just went ballistic. Now, this first incident was thought to have been caused by fireworks, confusing these birds, but story by story by story began to pile up about mass animal die-offs all over the place. So the Aflocalypse, as it became known as this collective story, the mass animal die-off of 2011, came in at number 2 that year. And the number 1 story of 2011 was UFOs over Jerusalem. Caused big panic in January. Everybody thought this was real because there were multiple camera angles, but the timing didn't match up. Some of the videos were discovered to be just basically matte paintings, so it was just a picture, and they just put this video over top of it. Yeah, technology's changed. So that was 2011. So moving along, 2012. Sad. Sometimes I put sad news in here in the top 10s. 2012, William G. Rolls passing, plus Grant Wilson moved on from the Ghost Hunters television show. Sad was that. See, number 9 was cryptolinguist R. Scott Nelson, who went on to create an alphabet based on the Samurai Chatter. And the Samurai Chatter, also known as Sierra Sounds, basically Bigfoot vocalizations recorded. The Falcon Project was number 8, which is supposed to be this remote-controlled airship for looking for Bigfoot. It was used to look for a suspected killer in Utah, and that was pretty much about it. Number 7 was spontaneous human combustion. A researcher discovered what he felt was the answer to it, the root cause being diabetes, or as Wilford Brimley says, diabetes. It's really diabetes. Sorry, Wilford. I love your oatmeal, but you're wrong. Number 6 was teleportation. So teleportation, I mentioned before about these particles being released and showing up almost before they were released. Well, the next year, they did it. They actually released photons, 97 kilometers. They actually showed up before they were completely released from where they left. Scary stuff. And that was 6 years ago. Number 4 was Bigfoot, a collection of Bigfoot stories. Number 3 was the Higgs boson discovery. It still wasn't finalized at the end of the year. There was some more work to do to validate that discovery, but I made that number 3. Anyway, number 2 was the Baltic Sea UFO discovery by the Swedish Ocean X team. That it was a underwater thing that looked like the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, well, that story, even though it made number 2 because it was a big deal, turned out to be basically a hoax. They were just trying to get money for future expeditions. The number 1 story in 2012 was sky noise. Sky noise, strange noises from the sky, most of which were ruled out in basically logical explanations. Jumping into 2013, the number 10 story that year was dreadlocked pygmies found in Indonesia. So reports of these little pygmy, dreadlocked, 20-inch tall pygmies running around a park in Indonesia. Weird stuff. Number 9, mass UFO sighting over Detroit. That was a pretty big deal. I remember that quite vividly, covering that one. Day to day. Number 8 was an OBE experiment. They were basically testing how people perceive things by being their minds basically being fooled. Number 7, the first and only time this has ever appeared on a top 10 countdown, and one of the few times that actually covered more than one story in a year. Number 7 in 2013 was cattle mutilations. A really interesting series of cattle mutilations were taking place. There was actually burned ground near where a cattle was mutilated in Missouri. Kind of weird stuff. Hasn't really happened since. Number 6 that year in 2013 was Russell Crowe's UFO. So Russell Crowe photographed a red light in the sky. It actually turned out to be a mast of a boat. Yeah. Number 5 was the magical car accident priest. So this was a story where this guy suddenly showed up, saved somebody's life, and then just mysteriously just disappeared into the crowd. Well, no. It turned out to be Reverend Patrick Dowling, who sounds like a TV show personality. Was actually documented. People had seen him there. I was in some photographs, and he later admitted, hey, that was me. But people made a lot out of that story. Number 4 was the return and departure of none other than Art Bell. So back in 2013, Art Bell made the top 10 and at number 4. So he came back on XM satellite radio to host a new show, Art Bell's Dark Matter. And it didn't last very long, only lasted a couple of months, September 16th to November 4th, where he just basically canceled the show and said, I'm done. And that was it. Number 3 in 2013, Dr. Melba Ketchum's effort trying to prove that Bigfoot exists. She didn't do a very good job. Number 2 that year was Sky Noise again. And the number 1 story of 2013 was Brian Sykes' DNA study, where he basically shredded a lot of people who had said that they had found evidence of Bigfoot by using this little thing called science. 2014, let's see. So porcelain dolls of San Clemente. Spooky story about these dolls turning up at people's houses that look like the people that live there. Creepy. But basically it was a lady who just wanted to spread goodwill. I'm not sure what happened to bringing over baked goods to your neighbors, but yeah, that story was a little creepy. Number 9 was the Iceland lake monster, validated. The Lake Lagerflot worm, which had been filmed 2 years prior, was quote-unquote validated, even though it was really just a chunk of ice in the water. Number 8, there was a database of faked ghost pictures that didn't even last to the end of the year. It was gone. Crabzilla was number 7, a big viral photograph of a giant crab. Number 6, Sasquatch Ontario's outrageous claim. This is really when the interdimensional capabilities of Bigfoot really took off. Number 5 was Siberian craters. Number 4 was the Gary, Indiana home infested by over 200 ghosts and demons. That was sold to Zach Bagans. He's in the news again about that. I guess it's going to be on TV a couple of weeks, I think, toward the beginning of the year. Number 3, back in 2014, videos of ghosts at soccer games. There's a couple of videos that were really, really weird. Number 2, lots of individual sightings turned into MUFON. Number 1 was cryptozoology attempting to embrace science by the announcement of the International Cryptozoology Museum Journal. 2015, there was that video of the real pterosaur flying over Idaho, which was more than likely fake. Number 9 was the picture of the image of the Jersey Devil. Remember that thing? Looked like somebody picked up a goat and threw it in the air. Number 8 was the Loch Ness Monster. So this is an important story here. Number 8, again, back in 2015, this story basically exposed the fact that there was evidence to point toward back in the 1930s that a bunch of the English pubs and hotels got together and basically concocted the story of knowing that there had been a urban legend about, not even like folklore about a Loch Ness monster. They basically created it to gain more tourism. And that story broke in a book that came out called A Monstrous Commotion, The Mysteries of Loch Ness, by Gareth Williams. Basically turned that story upside down. But did it hurt the Loch Ness monster? No. No, it did not. Number 7 in 2015, The Floating City in China. Just basically a mirage. Number 6, one of my favorite stories of all time, because I got punked. The March 10th video of an extinct bird. I'm really embarrassed to talk about this because I did believe in it. It was a dodo bird that was filmed by a camera. It didn't really look real, but I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is real. The Charlie Challenge. Remember that? That was number 5 back in 2015. The top 3, misidentified rocket launch. There was a lot of weird-looking rocket launches that showed weird jet trails that people really freaked out again with. Number 2 is Bigfoot. It was all over the news. A lot of fake stories. Number 1 back in 2015 was the kind of sad story, really, that happened in Spanish Fork, Utah, where a woman crashed her vehicle into icy water. Her baby was caught in the vehicle and was rescued, and on video, and one of the a few of the actual officers that were attempting to rescue the baby heard what they thought was a voice directing them to help rescue this baby. It was really just people on the bridge yelling down to them, but it was still by far the biggest story of 2015. 2016, we had the CERN sacrifice video, by far the creepiest thing I've ever seen video-wise from anything in the paranormal. We had number 9 was The Conjuring 2 that was coming out that year. Number 8 was Pedals the Bear. Very sad story. It was a pretty popular bear that was seen walking upright because he had some injuries to his paws. Unfortunately, somebody decided to go out, find Pedals, and shoot him. Number 7 was another sad story. Roquel Bain, 26 of Dayton, Ohio. She unfortunately died while attempting to investigate the Pope Lick monster. She ended up getting out on a train trestle, and when a train came along, was stuck out there on the train trestle. The only way to really survive that was to hang down off the side and not get hit by the train. Her boyfriend was able to hold on. Unfortunately, sadly, she was not, and she fell to her death about 80 to 100 feet, which is weird because the Pope Lick monster is known for killing people on that train trestle. Number 6 was NASA SETI and the FAST project looking for alien life. It started to really become a big deal. Number 5 was Young Discoverers. Bunch of kids looking for stuff. Number 4 was the Loch Ness Monster. Number 3 was the Clown Pandemic. Remember that? Number 2 was the Wow Signal follow-up. And number 1, back in 2016, was Wessie. And we're going to go through 2017. We're going to talk about that next week. And we're going to jump into real quick. Well, not real quick because I owe it to you guys. We're going to go through this in a few minutes here. The next stories, the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2018. And again, we've already done number 10 through number 7. Number 10 was Todd Standing, who was in the news all year long, talking about trying to sue California as well as British Columbia that Bigfoot was in fact real. Number 9 was Strange Creature Wanders into Live Shot in Utah, turned out to be a dog. Number 8 was the wolf-like creature shot in Montana, which turned out to be a wolf. Not a wolf-like creature, but a wolf. And number 7 was UFOs reported by pilots in Arizona, Ireland, and Baffin Bay, Canada. So your number 6 story this year of the top 10 paranormal news stories is, I don't hear a drum roll. So number 6 this year is one that's been around, and I mentioned it in past top 10s, of the Loch Ness Monster. Yes, the Loch Ness Monster returns to the top 10. And yes, you heard me even talking about how it was proven that it's documented that pub owners, hotel owners all came together to concoct this story to get tourists in the area. But it's still holding strong, and again, returns to the number 6 slot this year in 2018 of the top 10 paranormal news, top stories of 2008, top paranormal news stories of 2018. I think that's what it is. I don't know. It's my countdown. I don't even know what it's called. Anyway, it started back on March 26th. Dakota Franson, a tourist from Idaho, spotted a dark shape in Loch Ness near Urquhart Castle. He estimated the object was about 40 feet long and had the color of a hippopotamus. It was also said other shapes could be seen in the water. And Gary Campbell, who is the keeper of the official register of the sightings at Loch Ness, said this might have indicated that not only was this the Loch Ness Monster, but also the family might have been there as well. On April 30th, 53-year-old Ian O'Fadigan from Ireland spotted and filmed what he thought was a 20-foot-long creature in the loch. The video taken by cell phone was about 10 and a half minutes long and showed a creature swimming and moving up and down in the water. Unfortunately, even though it's 10 and a half minutes long, it's pretty poor quality, and you really can't see much. Despite the lack of clarity, the video did make the official register of Loch Ness Monster sightings. Now, this is when it gets weird. So it gets weird in May. 8-year-old Laria Anand was at Loch Ness with her grandmother in late May when the two noticed strange movements in the water. Now, her grandmother, Marie, grabbed her phone and quickly took some photographs toward the disturbed area of water. And then Laria asked to use the phone and shot a short video which shows light reflecting off of small waves that appear to be caused by something disturbing the surface. Of the experience, Marie said, quote, "We sat on the rocks for a few minutes. We were just taking silly pictures of each other and splashing our feet in the water. I just looked up, and that's when I spotted flickering on the water. It looked as though light was bouncing off something, but there were no boats or people, and it was something long, very long. I had to do a double take because there was just nothing to explain it. I took a few pictures, and then my granddaughter asked if she could take a picture. I didn't realize at the time, but that's when she shot the video. It was weird, really strange. I can't explain it, so the only thing I can think is that we have seen the Loch Ness Monster," unquote. Sadly, though, despite the video, the sighting did not end up making it into the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register created and curated by Gary Campbell. I don't know. To me, it just looked like some waves, some water splashing around and the sunlight reflecting. So that was an 8-year-old shot a video, but Friday, August 17th, around 7 p.m., 12-year-old Charlotte Robinson and her parents were on holiday to Loch Ness when she saw something about 50 feet from shore and took photographs with her iPhone 7. So here in the United States, we take vacations. If you're in Europe, you take holidays. I'd like to take a holiday. Anyway, she described her encounter as, quote, "There was something in the water about 50 feet from shore. I took a photo. It had a neck and head, was in the shape of a hook. I just took what I saw. It was black. I just don't know how far out it was in the water. I'm not good at judging distances." She said 50 feet. Anyway, after a minute, it disappeared and then came back again at a different place. It was up for less than a minute the second time. I kind of believed in Nessie, but I wanted to see the proof. I always imagined her as having long neck and flippers. I've seen something, but I'm not sure what, unquote. Well, this picture, if you've seen it, looks like it's like a mile away from the object in the water. And if you zoom in, you can't really tell what it is. Now, interestingly, the exact same day, Friday, August 17th, earlier that day, 54-year-old Lynn Locke, an elementary school teacher from Ontario, Canada, was visiting family in Glasgow, Scotland, so she must have been on vacation. I don't know, maybe a holiday. She encountered what she thinks was the Loch Ness Monster about 50 yards offshore near Urquhart Castle. She basically said she saw something moving in the water. There was a trail of bubbles. Went under the water a couple of times and then reappeared. So she took some pictures. Family was kind of skeptical about it, but she believes in it. Her sighting came at 9:40 in the morning, the same day as Charlotte Robinson's, about 9 hours later. So why did the Loch Ness Monster make the top 10? Well, these 5 stories carried the Loch Ness Monster in the media throughout the entire year. Well, there was a total of 11 sightings of the Loch Ness Monster in the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register. These 5 that I've just talked about were the most viral overall. So then why was the story only number 6? Well, there's 5 other better stories. And despite a strong showing with the Loch Ness Monster, none of these photographs, videos, or stories really shed any validation toward the creature and did nothing more than keep the legend afloat. So what about number 5? So number 5, well, that number 5 is, I don't hear a drum roll, but we'll just do a drum roll in your head. So number 5 is a weird collection of stories that I titled Marrying a Ghost. It all began back in January when Amanda Teague, she kind of rehashed, it's a confusing story, really. The mother of 5, she'd met the ghost of an 18th century Haitian pirate named Jack Teague. back in 2014. I mean, Haiti really wasn't even Haiti until the 19th century, but I'll let that one go. I'm a big pirate fanatic. On July 23rd, 2016, she married the ghost of Jack Teague, which she described as looking like Jack Sparrow, who was not real. It's not real. In 2015, Amanda began to alter herself to appear like the fictional Captain Jack Sparrow, spending 4,000 British pounds, or about 5,000 American dollars, on tattoos, jewelry, and clothing to become an impersonator. She even legally changed her last name to Sparrow. In October 2017, she married the ghost of Teague again in international waters to help circumvent the laws, although Ireland and the United Kingdom will still not legally recognize the marriage. In articles talking about her marriage, Amanda also discusses her, let's just say, sexual relationship with the pirate. And then later on in the year, around August, we had Amethyst Realm. So Amethyst Realm broke, around early August. That story kept hovering in the news for months. So Realm is a self-professed spiritual guidance counselor, a 30-year-old spiritual guidance counselor who confesses that she's been messing around with ghosts for years. And it actually caused her to have her engagement broken off after her fiancé came home and caught her in bed wearing a lingerie. He looked around, thought there was another guy in the house. She ended up telling him, "No, it's not a living man. I was having sex with a ghost." Well, he did the right thing. He left. Smart guy. Amethyst Realm claims she's done with earthbound men and has had at least 20 different ghostly lovers in the last 11 years. But she encountered a new lover while on vacation in Australia, who promptly followed her home. Creepy. In this initial batches of articles centered on her appearance on a show called This Morning in the United Kingdom, Amethyst also revealed that she wants to have a ghost baby. So while she's hoping for a real physical baby, she's not completely sure how she's going about getting pregnant and ultimately having a physical baby. Creepy, weird. And then she popped up again talking about getting married to her ghostly lover, finally settling down. She played the field. Now she's settling down. Weird, though, she says there was no going down on one knee. He doesn't have knees. But for the first time, I heard him speak. I couldn't actually hear his voice. Or she said I could actually hear his voice, and it was beautiful, deep, sexy, and real, unquote. So I guess ghosts don't have knees, but they have functioning vocal cords. I'm not sure how that works out. But Amethyst plans on getting married next year, so you can plan on hearing more stories in the paranormal news about her and her ever-growing trend. It's popping up. There's a lot of stars that have actually said that they've had sexual encounters with ghosts. It's just weird. I don't know. But I felt like it was just really wacky and out there that I felt that this should make the top 10. So why it made the top 10, these two stories kept the idea of having a relationship with a ghost in the news for about a year and a half, about half the year, I should say. The Amethyst Realm story came and went throughout the fall and became fodder for nearly every single major news outlet. Despite not being a verifiable story, its viral power not only thrust these stories into the top 10, but nearly halfway up the list. So why this was, I said number 5, but it was number 6. No, it was number 5. Why did I write number 6? So why it was number 5? Well, these stories were highly viral. As silly and frustrating as they were pretty big in the United Kingdom and were carried in a lot of newspapers, online newspapers here in the United States. Like I said, this has become a pretty popular conversation piece in the media recently, having relationships with ghosts. Despite how heavily popular these two stories were during the year, they just weren't really, there's nothing to them. There's nothing that we can really truly say about it. There's no evidence. There's no nothing. So now we look toward number 4. What could number 4 be? I know there was speculation, possibly, potentially, of Ogopogo making the top 10. And I'll be honest, when I first did the top 10, Ogopogo was on there. There was a collection of stories that happened. I forget what month that was. Was it like August or September? There was like 3 stories right in a row. And I was really excited because Ogopogo from Lake Okanagan, he gets kind of knocked for, he's not really the big show, the big creature. But I think I really wanted him up there. And unfortunately, I wish he could have beat Todd Standing, but he didn't make it. And we already had one story on Loch Ness, the Loch Ness Monster. But coming in at number 4 this year on the top 10 paranormal news stories was an interesting story. And it was about the Loch Ness Monster. I know, hey, we just talked about the Loch Ness Monster, but this is about the Otago Loch Ness Monster DNA search. And this actually broke in May of 2018 when plans in collecting DNA from the loch went mainstream. Now, Professor Neil Gemmell of the University of Otago led a group of scientists to collect 259 samples around Loch Ness at varying depths to record the diversity of life within the water. The goal with this scientific experiment was to collect DNA samples to determine what types of plant, animals, and other organisms that inhabit the loch. The search is geared toward identifying invasive species and potentially new species as well as cataloging anything else that lived there. So they basically just used the Loch Ness Monster as a way to really get attention for this story. And it got a lot of attention throughout the year. There were people that were really upset about this, calling this a really embarrassing and expensive scientific venture. But all in all, it's really interesting because this is it. I mean, if they are not able to find any DNA evidence from this 259 collections throughout the loch, this could very well spell the end of the Loch Ness Monster, right? It could validate that it's not actually in the water. If they don't find any DNA that's, from a creature like that. So this is actually a pretty big deal. So teams from New Zealand, Australia, Denmark, and France are currently breaking down these samples and comparing the results against known species. And even though this made the list at number 4, the results of the experiment will not be known until sometime in 2019. Now, they did make there was a story that broke after June when they were collecting these samples that said that they had basically not found the Loch Ness Monster. And that was just, they had not physically found the Loch Ness Monster, but they collected the DNA samples. So they didn't see it, but who knows what is in those samples. You will find out next year sometime when that story breaks. So why did this story make the top 10? The study of the water of Loch Ness, I think it's important enough, even by itself. It's an important thing to look at a large body of water and what's inhabiting that large body of water. But the fact that this could finally solve the mystery as to whether the Loch Ness Monster exists, that's a pretty big deal. My bet is that even though it will not find evidence of the creature, the findings will not damage the culture of belief behind Nessie. That's my guess. Why this story was number 6, or not number 6, number 4. Who proofreads this stuff? So number 4, the story is about science. It's about discovery. While this could determine the fate of the Loch Ness Monster, I really doubt it. This experiment will not be revealed until next year. If it was revealed that it was the Loch Ness Monster, does exist, obviously that would be the number 1 story. And I think if the results would have came out the same year the story broke, I don't know how the reaction's going to go, but it could have been a pretty big deal, people arguing about it. But I don't think it's going to damage the Loch Ness Monster. And with that, goodness, we went a little bit over, but that's okay. So yes, to recap really quick, the Loch Ness Monster was number 6 this year. Number 5 was Marrying a Ghost. And the number 4 story of the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2018 was the Otago Loch Ness Monster DNA search that was conducted back in June. So that leaves us with just 3 more stories. And I'm telling you, I'm looking at them right now, and I don't know how you guys are going to feel about them, but we're going to talk about those next week on the December 18th show right here on paranormalking.com, live at 8 p.m. Eastern. So with that being said, hope you enjoyed the top 10 so far. And again, if you don't like it, blame me. I'm the one that came up with this. This is my view, my picks on how this stuff fits together. It was really hard this year because not a whole lot of stuff really jumped out or stuck out. So it's kind of hard to weigh each thing with how heavy they were viral and how popular they were out in social media and things like that. But it's just for fun. It's just to get these stories out there. And again, next week, we're going to talk about the year that was 2018 in review with the recap of the top 10 so far, as well as the debut of the number 3, the number 2, and the number 1 story of the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2018. So I will see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.